Welcome to Musical Orbit's webinar with Juliette Bausor, Principal Flautist of the London Mozart Players and the Royal Northern Symphonia, and also with Ensemble 360, which is a fantastic chamber group that play all around the country, all around the world, Juliette, or just around the country?
We get everywhere, really. Get about, yeah.
Where were you most recently?
I've just got back I've been in London all week, and then yesterday I was with Ensemble 360 in Leamington Spa. Actually, we had 2 concerts there, which was good fun. And I've just literally got back to Newcastle just now. So
welcome. Have a big deep breath and a cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like quite a punishing schedule then.
Yes, it's quite full on. I'm kind of feeling I'm a little bit burnt out at the moment. Yeah, no, I'm enjoying myself. That's the main thing. But it's just kind of making sure I have time for a bit of kind of time out as well sometimes to relax.
You must have a lot of music to learn, particularly Ensemble 360, I think, is it?
Yes, I mean we tend to get the programs quite far in advance, so I try and keep it kind of always ticking along. So I have my piles of music that I know are coming up, and you kind of get rid of one and bring something else out, and you try and chip away at things as you go along. I mean, I think that's probably the same for any working musician. That you're just constantly trying to keep on top of the notes on what you're learning at that moment in time, and usually a couple of programs ahead as well.
So what's your favourite kind of music to play then? Is it chamber, opera, symphony?
Oh, that's a really difficult question. Well, I enjoy every aspect, which I think is why I try very hard to ensure my playing career is quite balanced at all times. I always feel like if I'm doing too much of one thing, I'm always kind of craving doing a bit of something else. So I do obviously a lot of chamber orchestra playing because I'm in 2 chamber orchestras, and so I because of that, it goes hand in hand. I love playing kind of Beethoven, Mozart symphonies and all of that Haydn. I particularly enjoy playing those composers in the repertoire because I think it's I enjoy the colours and the lighter style of playing, and the parts, the flute parts are obviously always really beautiful to play as well. So I love doing that. But then also for me, I think kind of making sure that I'm always doing a bit of solo work and a bit of kind of chamber groups and various kind of collaborating with various other musicians is always fun. And then at the same time, I'm always there craving a little bit of kind of symphony playing or opera playing as well, and going in to do that as well, because obviously the repertoire is so, there's such exciting kind of massive diverse repertoire out there that you want to do everything in your life. It's just kind of like, oh God, gotta do more.
It's a very fine balancing act. Many people are very tempted by the security of a salaried job, of course, with one of the big symphony orchestras or something, although nothing is totally secure, as we know. But how is it making ends meet with such a varied portfolio career like that? Is it very frightening?
Well, I'm lucky in that my job with the Non-Symphonia is actually salaried. I think it's probably one of the only salaried chamber orchestras there are in the country. I think I'm not entirely sure on that. So I am lucky with that. But I think I try not to let kind of finances rule my life, because obviously you tend to it's really nice kind of way of looking at life. I know rose tinted spectacles and way of looking at it, going, oh, it's not about the money, it's about it's about the playing. But I suppose you have to pay the mortgage, so you got to kind of keep on top of it. And I have to buy my time out of the non-symphonia to go and do other things, because obviously that's my salary. But I kind of, I don't mind so much. It's not so much that I work really hard to make ends meet. It's just happens to be like that because I enjoy doing lots of things, so I try and keep myself busy.
And do you use a diary service to help you with that juggling?
No, I've never been with a diary service, and I've always kind of thought I must join a diary service. But I suppose I've been lucky in that in a way I haven't needed one so much, because I had built up some contacts quite early and was already doing things. But I think juggling the diary is really a very difficult thing to do, and I wouldn't ever say I'm really good at it, because I tend to always be like, one minute I'm down one end of the country and the next day I'm somewhere else, up the other side, and I always think, oh, why did I do that? But you don't think it through. When something comes in, you're like, oh yes, I look like I'm free that day, that would be lovely, and don't think about the consequences. But I think also as far as juggling the diary, you know, I'm kind of lucky that I've never also managed to double book myself as yet, knock on wood. So I suppose
You've never done it, never double booked yourself. That's impressive.
I think so. I've always been, you know, I'm very I'm always kind of keen that once something's in the diary, it's in the diary. I'm not one to really ever pull out to try and do something else, you know, except for kind of when things are long scheduled in advance and things, you can't help it. But I think kind of generally, once you've got something in, I think it's good just to stick with what you've got in the diary, and you know, you've chosen to do it in the first place, so it must be good. So
I've just come a cropper though in the past, literally not writing it in correctly. I found that having a diary services has really helped me, because I can always double check.
Absolutely.
Was that the date I thought it was?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to have things written down. Certainly, yeah.
We've got a question from Barbara here, who says, what was the best piece of advice you ever got from a professional player?
Oh, wow. Okay. Let me think. Who is giving the best advice?
Or maybe you don't have to think about that while I ask you another question from her as well. She says, did you set out to have such a diverse career? Was it a conscious decision?
I suppose in a way it was conscious, but I started out, I always set out kind of thinking I wanted to do a lot of chamber playing, because I was doing it from quite a young age already. I went to the Purcell School of Music, and I also went to Junior Academy of Music as well on Saturdays. And I had a family, you know, my brother and sister and my mum, we're all musicians as well in place. So I've been kind of playing chamber music, I think, ever since I started playing. So I think as far as having a chamber kind of based career and a lot of changes in my career, I've always set out to do that. But then as I've grown and learnt more about playing and music, I've been more keen to make sure that I want to explore the repertoire, and I want to make sure I'm doing some operas, and I want to play such and such and such and such, you know, and I'm always kind of like trying to tick off things off my bucket wish list, you know, as I go through my life. So yeah.
Tim says, when you go into an orchestra for the first time, do you sit back and try and fit in to the wind section, or do you go for it and show them the kind of personality that you are, like it or lump it?
That's a good question. I think you know, I think you have to be yourself. You know, I don't think it's worth kind of being a shrinking violet and, you know, not letting people know who you are. I think you straight away should just try and relax if you can, and be natural in yourself. And I think as far as fitting in, you know, again, I think getting to know the people that you're working with is obviously important. And you know, generally every section I go into, I'm always like, oh, what a lovely section! Isn't everyone really friendly? And I think it's nice to kind of sit and have a cup of tea with them in the breaks and stuff, and get to know people. And I think that's important because it comes across with the playing as well. But I would certainly say don't ever really. I mean, yes, you have to adjust, you have to listen and all the rest of it, but don't change yourself if you know, to fit in somewhere in a way, because you can't change your personality, you can't change where you are, and you know, you can maybe tone things down sometimes, but I think you know, if you're going for a job and you want to go for a job and you're on trial, for example, I think you can't change yourself. If you get a job, you can't then suddenly become like some horrendous, you know, person. It's just show who you are straight away and not have to pretend that you're something else.
Yeah. Have you played in orchestras abroad where the tuning, of course, will be sharper than in Britain?
I've played kind of concertos and solo stuff with orchestras abroad. I don't think I've ever played in an orchestra abroad so much, but the tuning is a difficult thing. Yeah, and I think I remember I just did a solo recital tour last year, and all the pianos were tuned up 4/4/3, some of them, and I found that quite difficult. Certainly, you know, but I had prepared myself in advance. I knew obviously it was going to be like that, and some of the halls you ask them to bring them down as low as you can. They might bring it down to 4/4/1 if you're lucky, but it tends to be kind of 4/4/2 and that. So I kind of had prepared myself with my practice and my playing to know that I was always kind of working with a tuning machine and stuff, just to check that I was going to be able to kind of make sure that, especially my low register, is going to get up there. And yeah, so I think that's important. Yeah.
What about playing outside? I mean, I doubt you do many muddy field gigs, Juliette, but maybe in the past you did. How do you cope with? We always hear, you know, the wind players going, "Oh, it's so cold, my poor instrument." How do you cope with that?
Well, I mean, we're lucky. It's not like the a wooden instrument. It's, you know, if the clarinets and oboes, I think they have a really horrible time of it, especially. But I think, you know, I think the coldness and getting water in the keys and stuff. I mean, you can't really help it. It's going to happen, and so you just, you know, need to keep on, you know, your Rizzlers and your, you know, pads kind of cleaned out as much as you can, you know, without dragging the actual pads themselves. But I think, you know, just wrap it. Well, you can't. There's not much you can do. You're out there. You're playing, and I think all you can think to yourself is, you know, don't force it sound wise. It's just because if you do that, it's going to sound fairly horrible. It's often usually mic'd up when you're playing outside, isn't it? So I think you just kind of have to try and imagine you're playing in a nice space and and pretend it sounds lovely.
It's true that though, isn't it, that you feel when you're playing outside, it feels like no one can hear you, and the temptation is to enormously force it. Yeah. And of course that's absolutely the wrong way to go, because those mics are right there.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. They pick everything up, and I think actually, you know, when you get out the front and when you're in the audience side of it, it sounds completely different to where it is when you're sitting playing. So I think you have to try and relax and just imagine it sounding as it did when you were at home.
Tim says, do you have a standard warm-up that you do every time?
I have a few warm-up exercises. I mean, I'm quite kind of I'm a strong believer that you have to do a really good warm-up every day, and I think probably a lot of my practice time is usually warm-up, because you know, these days I tend to be kind of flying out the house, so I try and make sure I get a good warm-up up in either before I leave the house or when I get to a venue. And I use a lot of kind of the basic flute warm-up exercises, lots of Tafnel Gobel, Marcel Moy's sonority exercises, things like that, and I make sure that I've really covered the instrument, so the descending semitone exercises, lots of harmonic exercises, and anything just to make sure that I'm breathing and supporting properly, and the sounds kind of resonating and got it going for the day, and a little bit of finger work too. Yeah.
Sandeep says, how important is it to be physically fit as a wind player?
Well, I mean, interestingly, when I'm really busy, I like to try and make sure that I am exercising, because I kind of feel like it helps me not only kind of stamina-wise, because I think, you know, if you're doing, for example, if you're doing a recital and you've got an evening recital or something, it's a lot of, you know, stamina is really important for that. It's a long time to be blowing and breathing. So I think I try to make sure that I would never, none of my friends or family would say I was fit, you know, in any way. But I kind of try to make sure I'm doing kind of a basic amount of exercise and keep myself fairly healthy, and I try and eat healthily, and you know, just even if I think it also lets go of tension as well. And so, you know, if you just have a little run or swim or something like that, I think it's quite good. So, I mean, I think obviously it's going to go hand in hand. We often talk about, you know, with musicians, any time when you're performing, is kind of, you relate it to being an athlete in lots of different ways, to do with both the training, practice trainings, all the rest of it, and also building up your stamina as, you know, regular routine of practice as well. So,
and you have to counterbalance those trips to the pub after the show as well, don't you?
Absolutely, that's right. Yeah.
Socialising for business purposes, of course.
That's right, networking. Yeah.
It's true though, networking. I mean, really, all it is getting to meet people that you get on with and then enjoy playing with, right?
That's right, absolutely. And I think, you know, there's always, you come off stage and you're buzzing from the performance, and I think it's always good to kind of then go, you know, together collectively and go and have a nice drink and like unwind, and also it's the time when you actually get to actually chat to someone, because obviously when you're at work you can't sit there having a good old natter because you're having to concentrate on what you're playing. So
tell us a little bit about Ensemble 360 and the personalities in that. How do you all get on?
Yeah, it's a wonderful group of musicians. I mean, we're all really good friends, which is a massive part of why I do it, I suppose. So there's 11 players in all, and it consists of a pianist, string quartet plus double bass, and then a wind quintet as well. So a bit like, I suppose, like a lineup like the National Ensemble or something like that. And we've got, it's a really brilliant group of musicians. Everyone tends to be busy either with other orchestral work or chamber music as well, and then we come together to do our rehearsals and concerts, and we're resident at the Crucible for Music in the Round in Sheffield, and so that with that we get to do a festival there every May, which is kind of 2 weeks long, and then we do a couple of mini festivals throughout the year, and a series of concerts for them at the Crucible, and then a series of concerts around the country for them as well, which they just call their round the country tour. And then other than that, our other work is all kind of private work, I suppose, that we organise separately and go and do as well.
So who decides the repertoire then?
It's kind of collective, really. But I mean, obviously, when you've got 11 players, the way we tend to do it is we have an online diary, and everyone's put in their availability quite as far ahead as you can. And then usually, because we usually get booked kind of a good year or year and a half in advance for any of the concerts, so then you see who's available for that work, and then it's programmed around that. So we tend to do it that if people are available, then it's great to have a program that involves everyone, because that's the whole point of having a big ensemble. And then you have more you can have more diverse programs, because you can have a nonette in there, or Schubert octet, and then have Mozart flute quartet and something else, and it makes it kind of quite an interesting way of programming as well, because you've got this a nice selection of music to play. So yeah.
Do you ever get to commission stuff?
Yeah, we as a group, we've had quite a few things commissioned. Generally, for each May Festival, we'll have a commission. We're lucky enough to, because of being part of Music in the Round, we're lucky enough to get some funding towards that, which is also really helpful. I think we've had some really great pieces written for us. And then as a soloist as well, I've commissioned a couple of things. Last year for my tour, I commissioned a piece by Charlie Piper, which was brilliant, and it feels amazing to kind of have something written especially for you. You kind of see it, you see the development. I was getting these kind of pages emailed, kind of a couple of pages at a time. I was like, what's going to be next? Okay. And to then also work at it with him, being there with Charlie and all the composers being there whilst you're working on it. It's just really nice to see it evolving, really. So.
And what happens if they send you a bit and you think, oh, I don't like that? do you say, take that bit out, I'm not so keen?
Well, I think I usually hold judgment until I've heard it, till I've played it a few times and got to know it. If there's a bit that I think is particularly, I don't know if I've ever had anything which I thought, oh, that's really badly written. Don't want to know that. I can't remember a time when I've ever done that. Certainly it didn't happen with Charlie. But I'm not sure, but I think probably you could discuss ways of perhaps making it work a little bit easier or better for the instrument.
A very tactful lady, I know, very good. Now Tim's asking, how do you cope with a conductor, this sounds like personal experience on his part, how do you cope with a conductor who keeps banging on about wind tuning if you think he's wrong?
Ooh.
Have you been in that position? They do that thing, don't they? As a string player, I sit there and we all get bored as they go, wind tuning, do it again.
Yeah.
What do you
do? I think it's a really difficult thing, because often you open up a can of worms when you start doing the wind tuning. But I think sometimes it can be really useful to do it. But you have to hope that the conductor kind of knows if they are trying to be helpful and advise. You have to hope that they're saying the right thing, but it generally is that as long as you've got a really good bass, you go from the bass, tune up from the bass, obviously, and everyone just is listening. But then it's also to do with balancing as well, and it tends to be that, to be honest, it's usually something to do with just blending and balancing the sounds, as much as making sure that you're in tune, and being on the flute part, it tends to be if you're on an upper note, just if you bring the dynamic down just slightly and have a bit more bass underneath it, it will help you. So that's
bringing the dynamic down because you'll be able to hear better, or does it make it
hear better? And also it's easier to blend it as well, because if you're on those high frequencies, you're going to really stick out, and I think it can sometimes, that can make quite a kind of glaringly obviously out of tune. So it's quite nice if you just bring that down a little bit, have a bit more bass in there and a bit more of the middle parts, then usually it's kind of adjusts things quite nicely.
Sally says, what's the hardest musical situation you've found yourself in? And I'd like to add to that, musical or social, with musicians.
Musicians, yeah. Off the top of my head, my mind's
But
gone.
think about who you can't mention at this point, of course.
Yeah, I won't be mentioning any names, that's for sure. How does music? I think, I mean, it's quite hard if you find yourself playing with someone and you know it's really obvious that you've got really different kind of musical ideas. And I mean that goes also with conductors as well. You know, if you've really got an idea of how to play something, say you've got a solo part, and then they've got a very set way of doing stuff as well, that can be quite tricky. And I think a little bit of give and take in that. I think as long as it's about trust, and I think you know, I think you have to kind of give and take in both of you in that situation. And I think at the end of the day, if you can explain what it is, the way you want to do it, or really sell the way you play something, then usually, hopefully, it works in your favour.
We were talking earlier on about playing outside in the beautiful acoustic of the muddy field, but I was thinking also, you and I first played together in an opera pit.
Yeah.
Which how does that feel as a wind player, playing in an opera pit acoustically with that curtain above your head?
Yeah, I kind of find it quite hard actually, and it's a similar thing that you just have to kind of try and remember and believe that you are projecting. You are, you know, because I think usually when you're down there, first of all, there's quite a lot of noise around you because you've got the stage above your head usually, and there's kind of stuff going on up there, and you've got the brass and the percussion around you, and that's quite loud as well. And I think and the high frequencies of the wind instruments, and I think that you just have to try and you know just at the same time not force it again. It sounds really obvious, but I think that as soon as you start pushing it, you tighten, everything tightens up, and you're just going to cut out, you know, the harmonics within your sound. So you have to try and just again think about resonating and just relaxing and using your natural resonance, and just believe that it's going to be projecting.
So. You talk about relaxing. I'm just curious, do you suffer from performance nerves at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I would think probably most people suffer from performance nerves, and I think it's just tends to be the way of you know, mentally turning that around. And I know you did a webinar quite recently on it, actually, on performance nerves, and I didn't hear any of it, but I'm sure, I think that you probably were talking about just actually it's turning the way you think about things around and using the nerves to help the performance rather than kind of hinder it. And so I think, you know, we all have little kind of routines. You can get really stuck into things like, oh, I must have a banana, or I must have, you know, water and no salt or whatever for a performance. And but I think at the end of the day, it's about kind of turning things around. So if you feel like you've prepared something well, generally you can rely on the fact that it will go okay because you will have learned it. You know, it's all about practice makes perfect and all the rest of it. But you know, if things go wrong, it's also just forgetting it and just move on. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And it's a live performance. You know, it's never going to be the same as, you know, when you practice things over and over and over again at home and you're like, oh, I played it really well that time, you know, but then obviously in the show it's going to go differently. And sometimes the adrenaline is going to add an extra something. If you've got a little bit of shake in the sound, you know, as a wind player, you know, I think it doesn't really matter. Often that won't project over, and also if it does, it's just more colour that you can use. Just use it to your advantage. So
yeah, very good. So how have your auditions throughout your career been then? Have you done many?
I've done various kind of auditions, competitions, things like that, and I think there is a really weird kind of situation. You know, it's so unreal when you walk into one of those situations. It's not like performing. You know, you kind of find yourself walking into the room, and it's often quite kind of a sterile, weird atmosphere in there, and either no one will talk to you at all. I mean, I know people do screened auditions as well, which I think is kind of I've been on both sides of a screen. I think it's a really weird thing either way. You know,
which auditions have you been on the panel for behind a screen?
I've been on auditions for Northern Symphonia, and sometimes they will bring in screens. It depends. It's not I don't favour them, so it's not something I would ever push for.
Why do they bring the screens in then? What for a particular kind of job?
Yes, and I think it just I think for example for the string auditions, I think they do it that way, and then they have a chamber round at the end, which is when you kind of meet the people. They do it in stages, and I think sometimes they do stage auditions at the Symphonia, and it's just done like that. So they'll have a screen for the first round, make it less, there's no personality involved whatsoever. It's just listen to the sound and kind of move through them, because often there's so many applicants that you just have to get through as many as you can. And it's auditions, and from that side of it, from a panelist side, it's as difficult in a way, because you're thinking, well, you want to hear everyone, but you can't hear everyone. And so first of all, that's a really horrible thing to have to kind of go through the CVs in the first place. And I did a masterclass and was chatting to some students once about that, and I was just saying, all I can say as far as that is, to get an audition in the first place, is just make sure that your CV stands out, and from it's only on one page, and make sure that the first you get all your good things well presented right at the top. Yeah. And then I think as far as actually being in the room itself, it's from the first note you play, and you just have to kind of hope that if it goes really well and you still don't get anything, I think you just again have to try and take the positives from it. You think, well, I played well, I played my best, and it obviously wasn't what they wanted for that situation, and it's not necessarily to do with whether you're talented or able. It's sometimes other things that are affecting it, whether they think, oh, we're looking for this sort of sound, or we're looking for this or whatever. It's usually there's kind of something already premeditated in there as well. So kind of don't lose hope from a failure in a competition or audition. But
there's also the statistics, aren't there? If you enter enough auditions, eventually one's going to go your way. If you do one, the job that you want, I want to be the LSO, for instance, and you do all your hopes riding on that one audition, it's not much chance that's going to go well. It's too much pressure apart from anything else, isn't it? Yeah,
that's right. I mean, it's awful but to say, but it kind of, some people are really good at auditions, and some people aren't so good at auditions. And I think you can only, it's like anything, the more you do of them, the better you'll become at them. And just because it's unnatural, you just don't know what to expect. And so, again, I think the more you do that, you can kind of walk in the room and sort of know kind of what the layout's going to be. There's going to be a table there with a few people sat on it, and and all the rest of it, and they're going to have sat through about 150 people already that day and just want to go home. So I think the more you do, the more you can kind of psychologically kind of think, oh well, I'm just going to go in and do my thing and hopefully play my best.
We've nearly run out of time. We've got one last question from Sally, who says, can you recommend good finger exercises for general agility?
Oh, any scale-like exercises. I use the Chaffin and Gobert books. There's I can't even think what the titles of the books are, but and there's a few kind of daily exercise books, and any of the scale-like exercises in there. And I mean, don't overdo it, because I think you can do too many of those things. I mean, just basic scales are enough, but to keep it interesting, these exercises, they just vary the scales, and you kind of do exercises based on scales, but scales and thirds, fourths, fifths, that sort of thing, and chromatically. So I use those, and I use Riker 7 daily exercises. I think I use those usually every day, kind of a few of those, kind of chip in and out of little bits of them really. And what other exercises? I think that's probably
those are your sort of fibre, the musical fibre, are they?
Yeah, that's right.
Juliette, thank you so much. It's been today. If anyone would like a lesson online with Juliette, go to www.musicalorbit.com, and we'll hopefully see you again soon, Juliette.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, bye.
Bye then.
Our little friends are flying through the galaxy.